Hello Sec2s, this is Mr. Lai and welcome to Argumentative Essay Writing. Before we begin, please ensure you have your handout with you and do take down useful notes along the way. Are you ready? Here we go. Through the lessons ahead, you will learn 5 things about argumentative essay writing. We will begin by looking at some of the differences between discursive and argumentative essays. Next, you will learn how to identify argumentative essay questions. This involves a look at some of the keywords and phrases that may appear in these questions. This will be followed by you learning how to write thesis statements, which go in your introductions. Next, you will look at how to craft counter-arguments and rebuttals, which form an important part of your essay. Last but not least, we will look at the use of persuasive language, which is important here as you need to convince your readers about your points. Before we go any further, I am sure you know what discursive essay writing is about. How is that different from argumentative essay writing that you are about to learn now? Think about some of the possible differences. Had your chance to brainstorm? Now, let us take a look at some of the differences and similarities between discursive and argumentative essays. If you recall what you learned earlier in the year, a few things should come to mind. Firstly, you should realize by now that discursive essays always seek to explain and describe a particular issue. Your primary purpose in them is to give information or inform the reader about a certain topic. What that all means is that you are engaging in an in-depth discussion about a certain issue that is brought up by the question. With argumentative essays, your task is slightly different. You are to present a strong position on a certain topic, and your purpose in the essay is to convince the reader of the validity of your view. So what that all means? It basically boils down to the fact that discursive essays do not take a stand. But with argumentative essays, it is critical that you state a clear stand in them. However, despite all these differences, there are also similarities between both genres of writing. For a start, you are required to think critically in both, and you will face the same kind of real-world issues that you faced earlier in the year with discursive essay questions. You are to analyze, and you are to discuss these issues, regardless of the genre. And most importantly, you need to back up whatever analysis and whatever points you are raising with the relevant evidence and examples. So the same kind of peel paragraphs that you wrote for your discursive essays still apply with argumentative essays. They just have a slightly different spin to them. With knowledge of the differences and similarities between discursive and argumentative questions, let us now put your knowledge to good use. Take a look at pages 1 and 2 of your handout. You will see a huge table with a series of sample questions. Your aim here is to decide which of these are discursive and which of these are argumentative in nature. We will also engage in a detailed breakdown of each question so that you understand what is the scope of coverage, the topic, as well as the task at hand. Now, what does it mean by scope? That is the extent of coverage to which the question limits you to. It could be in terms of the content coverage, or it could be perhaps a certain time frame. What does it mean by topic? The topic is the subject matter, and every question will limit you to a certain subject matter, or perhaps maybe 2 or 3 subjects. Last but not least, the task. The task determines what exactly you're supposed to do with the question. Are you writing a discussion, or is it going to be an argument where you have a stand and you need to support that stand? Let us now take a look at the first question. One's educational qualifications are the most important for success in life. What are your views? This is a common way to structure an expository question. You have a statement, which is then followed by a short question. Now, let us take a look at the statement first. What is in this statement? does it carry an opinion of its own? I think the clear answer is yes in this particular case. Why? Because the question tells you that your educational qualifications are the most critical to achieve success in your life. So, in this sense, the statement carries a certain slant to it. It states a certain point, and then you are asked in the short question that follows what kind of opinions you hold with regards to this statement. Now, how does this all matter? If you are given a statement with a particular opinion in it, and you are then asked to discuss or asked about your opinion of this statement, effectively, you will have to argue whether you agree or disagree with this statement. So in this case, you will be writing an argumentative essay. Now, how does your question break down into its scope, topic, and task? Let us now take a look at what is in this question. Now, you have the term educational qualifications. This is part of the topic. You also have the word success. What does it mean by success? How do you define success? There are ways to qualify this. You are also limited by the scope, which is the word life. So what does it mean by life? Does it cover your adult life? Does it include your retirement years? Does it include your teenage years? That is something that you need to consider. But you must realize that your entire response needs to center around your life, or at least the life of a person. So there needs to be some sort of a realistic and finite time span. Now, what does it mean by most important? Are there other factors at play here? That will be something for you to consider. So, whenever you look at a question, you need to consider what is the scope of coverage, so the extent to which you can discuss or argue your subject matter. What is the subject matter at hand? In this case, you are talking about whether it's educational qualifications having the greatest impact on success in your life, or are there other factors? And then, last but not least, you consider the task, which is what are your views, specifically the word views. In this particular context, it means what kind of opinion do you hold with regards to this statement? Do you agree or do you disagree with it? Okay so far? Let's move on. Analyze the pros and cons of social media in everyday life. This probably looks a lot more familiar. You probably saw this kind of question when you wrote your discursive essays. Is this a discursive essay? I think the answer is pretty clear-cut. Yes, it is. Now, you will realize that with this question, you are simply asked to talk about the pros and cons of a particular topic, in this case, social media. So you're discussing the advantages and disadvantages of social media, where social media is your subject and your other area of consideration are simply the advantages of it and the disadvantages of it. Your task is to analyze, and your scope is limited by the term everyday life, which means how does social media work for or against you in your everyday existence. Alright? Does it all make sense to you? Good. Let's move to the third one. The government should force people to care for the environment. Do you agree? This might strike you as more clear-cut than the first sample. And I think you probably have an inkling here that this is an argumentative essay. If you feel the same way, you're right. Why? Because you are asked whether you agree. And you have a statement which is in the same vein as the first sample question. The statement carries with it an opinion. Whenever there is an opinion in the statement, and you are asked whether you have certain views, you have certain opinions, or you agree or disagree with the statement, it is an argumentative situation. Now, you will need to consider a few things here with regards to the scope, topic, and task. Firstly, it involves the government. It is about the government forcing people to care for the environment, and there is the word environment. So you need to talk about environmental issues. You also need to talk about what does it mean by the government. It will involve perhaps discussions about policies that the government may implement, or perhaps initiatives that the government may roll out to get people to care about the environment. Alright? Let's move on. Young people should not be in romantic relationships while they are still studying. Discuss. I know what's going on in your mind here. You'll probably say, I see the word discuss. Does that mean this is a discursive essay? Well, just hang on a little moment. You have a statement that precedes the word discuss. It is very easy to jump to the conclusion that if you see the word discuss, it means you're writing a discursive essay. But that need not be the case and should not be the case in all situations. Why? Now, if you look at the statement here, it is in the same situation as two questions earlier. The statement brings about a certain opinion. It carries with it a slant. And you need to talk about this opinion. So if you are asked to discuss a particular statement that has a certain opinion in it, you will be forced to write an argumentative piece. Because, simply put, if you have an opinion stated to you and you're asked to discuss that opinion, you will either have to agree or disagree with it, or at least have a qualified position somewhere in between. Now, we will talk about the specifics of that later in your lesson, but for now, let's focus on what is the scope and the topic here. So, you have the word young and people. What does it mean by young people? That limits the extent of your discussion. What does it mean by romantic relationships? And what does it mean by studying? Those are your topic areas. So these are all things for you to consider as you look at a question like this. Last but not least, we have this question. What are some benefits and drawbacks of social welfare, such as subsidies in healthcare and free education? This is quite a long question. But is this discursive or argumentative? Let us take a look. Firstly, you see the words benefits and drawbacks. This is like talking about pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so it's kind of pointing you in the direction of a discussion. You have a certain topic, which is social welfare, and you are also given specific examples, which are subsidies in healthcare and free education. Now, is there an opinion somewhere in this question? I think the short answer is no. Are you asked to state an opinion, or are you asked to discuss a particular statement with an opinion in it? No. So in this case, you'll be writing a discussion, and it will be a discursive essay. Is everything alright so far? Good. Just like discursive essays, argumentative essays have a certain structure to them as well. It comes in a similar looking triangular diagram that you would have seen previously. You still begin with an introduction, along with the same sub-elements, the hook, the elaboration, definitions, and the thesis statement. Of course, there are some differences here, and they mainly lie in the thesis statement. We will look at these in detail a little bit later. Next, you have your body, which you also know as your peel paragraphs. Here, the structure remains the same. You are still required to begin each paragraph with a topic sentence that states the main point of your paragraph. Next, you should substantiate the point and provide supporting evidence. This should all be followed by a link that draws your point back to the question. A unique element of argumentative essays is the counter-argument. Now, because you are stating an opinion and you are arguing in support of that opinion throughout the rest of the essay, it's important to have a counter-argument so that you are able to state alternative views and your understanding of these views. Now, you should avoid contradicting yourself, and we'll look at how you can craft your counter-arguments effectively later in your lesson. Last but not least, there should be a proper conclusion, and because you began by stating a certain stand in your introduction, this needs to be reiterated in your conclusion. Of course, you can also provide broader insights, but please be mindful not to include new information in your conclusion. Now that you know the structure of an argumentative essay, let's put your knowledge to good use. Take a look at page 9 of your handout and sample argumentative essay number 1. Here, I would like you to do two things. Firstly, please identify the different parts of the essay. Next, highlight and annotate the main points. Remember what we talked about with regards to peel paragraphs. Have fun!